So you're a young guitarist thinking of becoming a professional musician and wondering, should I learn to read music or just play by ear? Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Rich Kettner. Welcome to Starry Night Guitars. I'm going to share a bit about whether it's beneficial to learn to read music or just play by ear. I think it's kind of the perpetual question a lot of guitar players go through. The short answer would be, it depends. It depends on what you want to do for a career. Music has always been a part of my life. I started as a young kid playing, well, as far as in school, playing trumpet. But I already had a guitar at home. And within a very short period of time, I got a Mel Bay guitar book. And I tried to take what I'd learned from playing trumpet, trying to learn to read music a bit on guitar. But once I got the bar chords, off I went into rock and roll. So I had the benefit of both worlds, playing by ear, like a lot of blues and rock players do, and then learning to read notation, or the notation world, what I did in band on trumpet, and then later French horn and other things. And I think that was a tremendous advantage for me. It really rounded me out as a musician. I found out when I got in college and got into a college jazz band, probably 90 to 95, 99% of the horn players have been in bands since elementary school. So they've played elementary, middle school, high school, now they're in college. They've been reading music all that time. Or a lot of guitar players, if they learn to read it all, they're way behind the 8 ball. They're not as stronger readers. So one benefit is if you want to go to go to college and study music, if you are a strong reader, that's going to be a major feather in your cap that might put you ahead of some other guitar players, at least playing in ensembles. So as I said, I played trumpet as a kid, and I had, a bunch of different paths. I did trumpet, got in high school and had braces, couldn't play trumpet for a bit, played drums. I played timpani and marched with some drums, did some bass guitar in jazz band. So I had a lot of different experiences that kind of helped me out. Went into the Marine Corps to be in one of the Marine bands as a trumpet player, and shortly after getting in there, realized what I really wanted to do was be a guitar player. So I wasted a great deal of time in the Marine Corps, but finally, like the last year and a half, I started getting serious about, gee, if I really want to pursue this, what do I need to do? What do I need to work toward? And one thing that was a major impact on me was it's an embarrassing experience, but it was a wake-up call for me. I had an opportunity to play in a pit band for a performance of West Side Story. Now, I knew some of the music. I had never looked at it before. I thought, wow, that'd be so fun. And some of my buddies were doing it, guys in the Marine Corps, trumpet player, trombone, I think maybe a sax player, a drummer, myself. Well, I got the music. And if any of you are familiar, if you ever looked at that music, it is really tough. A lot of the guitar parts are like bebop lines because Leonard Bernstein was kind of the cool jazz era, right? So he had a lot of single lines where the guitar is doubling or echoing the sax parts or piano parts. And I quickly learned that I could not read music on guitar. I could read notes on the first 3 frets that I had learned from Mel Bay. What I had to end up doing was like memorizing parts or learning them by rote and living through that show. So I realized when the show was over, and I did okay, but I realized, wow, I need to learn to read. And I didn't really know where to start. And back then I had a subscription to Guitar Player magazine. Again, this is like 76 through 1980. And there was a weekly column by a guy named Tommy Tedesco, who was, if not #1 guitar player in studios in Los Angeles, he was one of 2 or 3 top calls. He did everything. Played at every TV show, commercials, movies. You heard him all the time. And he came out with a book called For Guitar Players Only. And the essence of it is he teaches you, or he shows you how to learn to read on the guitar. So first he does on single strings, just from the open to the 12th fret, just recognizing all those different notes, sharps, flats, all the possible accidentals. So the part that was really powerful was Tommy talked about position playing. For instance, if I'm in 3rd position, that's where my index finger is. The lowest note is the 3rd fret of my 6th string. If each finger covers 1 fret span, the lowest note I can get in 3rd position is the G on my low E string, and the highest note I can get is B flat on my 1st string. And what he would do is write an exercise where you're just playing every possible note in that position. Totally random, atonal, just. So you would, without looking at your hands, keep your eye on the music and find every possible note. He did it in first position, third, fifth, seventh, to where the goal was eventually for you to be able to just look at a piece of music that you're going to sight read. Find the lowest note, okay, here's the highest note. I can play all that in fifth position. And I could sit there and read it down, and I'd know where all the possible notes are. And I worked on that book daily. I would say an hour to an hour and a half a day, I think is what I did. Like in my last year of my 4-year enlistment. And then when I auditioned for school, I got a scholarship to get into the school. And I only got in there because I could read. I wasn't much of a soloist. I could comp a little bit, but I could play big band charts where there were, single note lines written out for guitar. And there were other guitar players when I got into the school who could play some, maybe even better soloists than me, more out of a rock background. When we auditioned, when it came time to reading, I could read it through, and they would stumble because they had never learned to read, because they had just played coming from a rock point of view. So that helped me get into school, but I quickly found out I had no jazz chops. I could just read a bit. Then I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to perform with a local big band. The band director of the school I was in played bass with this big show band. We were in New Orleans, and back then there was a lot of live music. A lot of conventions would come into town, all the big hotels, the Hilton, the Hyatt, Marriott, that kind of stuff. And we'd play for all these conventions that would come into town. It was like a 10, 12-piece band. There were 2 trumpets, trombone, alto, tenor, 3 singers, rhythm section, so about 10 musicians, whatever, 10, 12. And this bass player was my teacher, and the guy who played guitar in that band was getting out of the band. They needed to replace him. And my band director said, hey, you could do this job. So he put in a word for me to the leader of the band, who I did not know. And he said, okay, we'll give the kid a shot. Well, the audition was not going and sitting in front of some guy, and here, can you read this? It was going and actually playing a gig with these guys. So I show up, I drag my amp and my guitar, have a tuxedo. I'm not even sure how I had a tuxedo, but I did. I get on the bandstand, and we're in front of a couple thousand people, and the book is about this fat. He calls the number, 52. Flip to the book, open up, you just get to the page. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. You got to play. Now, it might be, it might say screaming guitar solo, but you had all of 5 seconds to look at it and figure out what you needed to do. Now, obviously, if I got the gig, then I would know the tunes and kind of know what was coming. But that first night, it was just, trial by fire. And I guess I did okay because I got the gig. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And that was a tremendous learning experience because I was way over my head. I could read notes and I could solo some. But there were nights where we did, instead of reading tunes, while people were eating dinner, the horn players would just stand up and call a tune, such and such days, wine and roses, or, name a key, and this to tell you how many flats or sharps you have. And then count it off and go, assuming that I knew this tune. So I knew the changes, I could put it in that key, and I could play over it. And the bass player could kind of get through it. The guy playing piano was the jazz studies director at my school. He was really a trombone player, but he was a great piano player, and he knew like every tune. You could name a tune, name a key, any tempo, and he'd play it. So I'm sitting back there scrapping, trying to find a note, trying to play something, and they would turn to me and say, solo. So that was quite the trial by fire, but it was very beneficial. But to return to my original post, to the idea of reading, I would have never got that gig if I couldn't have read. Because I met other guys in town that definitely soloed way better than me. But they couldn't do this gig because they simply couldn't read. Even reading chord charts, never mind reading single lines. My point would simply be, if you want to go to school, or you want to be a professional musician, certainly if you want to do a studio work, you have to be able to read. Those guys can read anything. A dead fly on the page, they read everything. and there's no mistakes. You can't make a mistake. If you get an opportunity to get in the studio, you blow it, make a mistake, you just don't get called again. But even with jazz players, all the guys that I played with, all of them could read. And whatever instrument they played, was a horn or guitar, bass, something, most of them also played piano. And the better players were pretty proficient on piano. You know, the level of musicianship was just very high. And the understanding of that you would read, definitely you would be reading music. Now, if you just want to be a rock player or blues player, that may be of no benefit to you. You may never be asked on a blues gig to read a chart. Maybe. Very likely no. But I'm saying if you want to make a living as a guitarist, I guess whether it's studio work, or you want to be a performer, or you want to do blues or this or that, I would say if this is your knowledge as a guitar player, if you learn to read, it's only going to open up that much more knowledge you have and make you that much more marketable. I would think it just makes sense. You'd be ashamed that you have a reputation as a great player who plays something in the pocket and tasteful, and you get into a situation and someone puts a chart in front of you because they just assume because you play so well that you can read. And then have to say, I can't read, or try to stumble your way through it. It can be very embarrassing. So I would think anyone at any level, it's beneficial to try to learn to read some. So I hope some of this is helpful, or at least interesting. I'd love to hear your stories of the benefits or detriments of reading, or maybe situations where you got stuck in a situation where, you know, you wish you did read and it messed you up because you couldn't do that. So, all the best. Enjoy the journey.